Being a firefighter takes a toll on your physical health, your mental health, your family. It's a lot. We don't always think about that, but we should. And so we're talking about it with Jim Burneka next on the Compounding Change podcast.
This is the Compounding Change podcast, sharing stories of small but meaningful changes that compound into amazing impact. Brought to you by Shannon Davis and DavisCompoundingChange.com. Change happens fast. Take advantage. Discussions on this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to DavisCompoundingChange.com or this podcast. Now, here's your host, Shannon Davis.
Welcome to Compounding Change, the podcast where small actions lead to big results. I'm Shannon Davis, your host, and a financial advisor who works closely with firefighters, police officers, and others to help plan strong retirements and build financial security. But this podcast goes beyond finances. I am very fortunate to get to sit down with Jim Burneka, who wrote this awesome book, Overcoming Tuesday, and he is making a difference. And we will talk more with Jim in just a moment. He's a retired firefighter, a podcaster, and co-author of this book, Overcoming Tuesday, which he wrote with his sister. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me on here, Shannon.
I have to tell you, I, number one, love the book. Number two, am just honored that you agreed to sit and talk with me. Like I said, I'm working on making my way with doing this podcast thing, and I know you have a lot more experience than I do, but just always impressed when somebody steps up and puts themselves out there. This book was just amazing. It goes beyond firefighting. It goes beyond your experiences, your traumas. This book can help so many people. I say that because it's about healing and resiliency, and it just there's so many people that this can help. I have a conversation with my sister who helps people going through trauma, or whether they're changing what they're doing in their lives and making the impact that you're making. You've touched on so many things in your life with the firefighting, with the recovery. You've had cancer. So how do you put all of that in? This isn't even that thick of a book. How do you put all of that and make such an impact in such a short while?
You know, I think it's because I dealt with all of that was, I think the reason why I was like, I need to put this out there, and just share it, because I think that is all those different ailments is not something I think you would see in any other typical job.
Mm-hmm.
You want it, I've realized my occupation, as rewarding as it was at times, it also did a lot of negative things to me, whether it's, my hearing loss, the cancer I had, and certainly the behavioral health issues that I really continue to deal with. Even though the book is done, that's one thing I think that people don't really think about, is I think when they go, oh, he wrote a book, he's all good, all is well. And
Mm-hmm.
am I better? Absolutely. But I'm still a work in progress. Like, and there's enough stuff there to where I'm like, I really could do a sequel if I wanted to.
That's what I thought too when I read it and have listened to some of your stuff. I'm like, is there going to be a part two? I think that it's helpful to see, and it's so raw and so real. And credit to your sister. I loved how it was written and how it was laid out. I think a lot of people, I know I do. I write amazing books as I'm walking my dogs. All the clarity that I have until I get home and try to put something on paper, and it just doesn't happen. So might need to talk to your sister. She did a great job with that. What did you, when you were thinking about going into the fire career, was that something that you always dreamed of doing? What led you to go into fire?
So my dad played on a softball team with a couple of Dayton firefighters that he went to high school with, and he was buddies with. And I was I wasn't the greatest of kids, troublemaker. I mean, I wasn't getting arrested or anything like that, but I certainly was a problem child. And I think my parents were just trying to figure out anything with me to something positive. And um, I think my dad ended up asking his friend Jeff if I could do a ride along, and then pitched it to me like, "Hey, you want to go hang out with Jeff at the fire station one day?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, let's do that." And I was probably around 15 or so. I mean, I didn't drive. I remember my dad dropped me off at the firehouse, and not really knowing what I was getting into at all. But I remember it was a Saturday, and it's kind of crazy to think, like, I remember so much from that day, but I can't tell you. I'd have to really think about what I did yesterday.
Right.
But something that happened, 30 years ago, like, it's still super fresh in my brain. It's crazy, but I had such a good time with those guys, and I just realized, like, their job, and I only saw the positive side, of course, at that point.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
very propaganda like, but the gist of it was they got to hang out, they got to just have fun, and then they'd
Mm-hmm.
go out and go on adventures. And
Yeah.
no 2 days was ever the same. And I just realized, like, man, this is fun. This isn't even work, is
Right.
really how it seemed to me at that point in time. It was just hanging out with your friends and going on calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that unfortunately or fortunately, at least people are still going into the service. Although it's fewer and far between. I know the numbers of recruits are down, at least from 20 years ago. But I think that there is that premise. How quickly though does that idea of it's fun and we're sitting around, and when did you get slapped with reality of the job?
Hmm. That's Shannon. That's a great question. You know, actually, I know. I think I know exactly when. So when I got out of drill school in Dayton, they stationed me at 15s, which was literally 2 blocks from where my parents were. It's right where I grew up. So I knew that whole neighborhood, which is a good thing, right? I knew where I was going, but at the same time, I knew a lot of people around there, and I think I got pretty early on. I had one of my friends' grandmas pass away that I went on. That I grew up there. Went to that house so many times as a kid, and then I also had a friend's little brother die from an overdose,
Oh,
and it was it was probably those two things where I was like, all right, this isn't all fun and games. Like,
right.
there's some serious stuff here, and I know it was compounded due to the fact that I was working in the community that I grew up in. So there were all those relationships. Um, but having it personal was definitely impactful. And thankfully I didn't have a whole lot of those personal calls after that, despite working there for another 20 plus years.
Right. Right. So yeah, in your book you referenced having it was a fellow firefighter who passed away from a snake bite.
Yes,
That was early on in your career, wasn't it?
it was. Yeah, I was
That
I was going through medic school, so I think I had probably less than 2 years on the job, somewhere around
um,
that time frame. And talk about being at the wrong place at the wrong time, because that's what it was. I wasn't even working that day,
mm,
and I ended up helping out and trying to do something. Um, but that was another really real, you know, incident
Yeah. There were several moments in the book that, and I'm an emotional person. I always say it wouldn't be a career I could do because I just, I can compartmentalize with some things, but I think that I wouldn't be strong enough. Just reading your book, um, it brought me to tears. And some of those, those types of moments, that you didn't see it coming. So, it just, I like to, I like to get to know my clients, my customers, um, who I work with better. And I love that I get to go into the stations and have these conversations with other firefighters when in the planning side of things. Um, but there are some stories, I really admire people who have worked in the service, and I just don't think enough people know the sacrifice that you guys go through. It's seen, I work for 24 hours, have a couple days off, work 24 hours. And I think that that's what's seen. But I wish that more people would take the time to explore other people's careers so that they understood all those facets that you guys deal with. Speaking of, something that I was enlightened with at one of the OAPFF conferences was about uniforms. And I know that you're trying to make, or you have tried to make, an impact on what you're exposed to. And there's a lot of cancer that's linked to that. And I don't think people in general realize, you think smoke inhalation or, what you're exposed to, but you don't realize that what you're trying to protect yourself with is also causing you illness.
Yes, that's correct. Like,
So what have you done with that, and where have you been able to have an impact?
well, I think the biggest impact I had was just publicizing that this was an actual thing, and even doing that was kind of a hard sell. Um, and what I mean by that, and let me even back up. Like, when we're at a fire, we are exposed every fire we go to different chemicals and carcinogens every single time. And we could be wearing our full fire gear, we could be wearing our face piece, and we're still getting exposed because these chemicals can still get through our gear and get onto our skin where we absorb them. So
Hmm.
every single fire we absorb stuff into our skin. So, but what we didn't realize is that our fire gear itself was a carcinogen, and that there was chemicals in there that really didn't belong. And again, we were absorbing that into our bodies. So,
Hmm.
um, probably the biggest thing I did was just sound the alarm, and I was part of that. I mean, I just was one of a handful of guys and girls that were really thought that this was an issue and needed to be done about it. But we were combating the the gear manufacturers early on, and we were also combating the chemical companies. And these chemical companies, I mean, they got the same playbook that big tobacco used back in the day. Flame retardants were they used the same playbook as well. So um, it was initially it was pretty hard to get enough people around you and get the science and get the evidence out there that this is a problem. But once we did, and once we really, I would say, once we got the IFF involved and trying to change the standard, that's when I think everything shifted to the positive. And
That's great.
there is now gear that you can get like right now today that doesn't have these chemicals in it,
That's wonderful.
which is great. And
Yeah.
I leave next week. I go to Houston, um, where I'm on a committee with the IFF, in which we're trying to reimagine what PPE really should look like for us. And we're trying to really come up with what is important to us, the firefighters that are actually wearing this stuff. And once we have a concept, then we'll have the manufacturers make it. But we're not going to include them until then, because
Right.
we don't need their influence, because they have showed through their actions that, and this is not everybody, but a lot of them have chosen profit over our health.
Right.
And
Yeah,
clearly we've got an issue with that.
definitely. Well, speaking of health, goes into health and wellness. You've been a big part of that. You were the wellness coordinator, or have been, you're no longer the wellness coordinator, correct?
Correct.
But that was very very telling and very brave of the transition between being the wellness coordinator, everything that you experienced, and then having the fortitude, the gumption to be able to admit when you needed help as well. I felt for you,
Yeah.
feel for you.
You know,
But sometimes when you do it, you can be even more impactful because you've experienced it.
true, true. I always, when I'm looking for peer supporters, I kind of had the attitude of, I don't want a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout, somebody that has been good their entire life. And
Exactly.
like I want the people that have been flawed, that have
Right.
had
Learned.
issues, but have recovered,
Mm-hmm.
and can use that experience to help others. Like I think that vulnerability and that being able to empathize is huge. And also just, yeah, being able to share your history allows others to open up as well. And you're not going to be able to do that if you got a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout.
Right. If you've always been perfect, how do you know what to change, right?
Yes, I mean, you can be a great listener, you can still guide people, but you can't understand. And I
Right.
think that is so important in those type of roles.
Well, I think that that's why it's so good to have written the book, though, so that people can see the transition and that you've grown from it, and that there's no perfection, but also exposing that you've been here, you've tried to help other people, but then you yourself needed help too, and then you're coming out on the other side. Granted, like you said before, not perfect, but you're coming out on the other side better for it.
I really thought that role was going to be like an answered prayer for me. Like coming back from the cancer and going back and working and doing the exact same thing that got me sick, like I had an issue with that. Like that didn't seem right. Like I knew like that this doesn't make sense, that this is crazy. Like why would I do this? And so when all of a sudden I had the opportunity to get off the line and go 40 hours and sleep in my bed every night,
Mm-hmm.
and really, instead of focusing on the lovely citizens of Dayton, like actually be able to focus on my members. I mean, I thought it was perfect, and I was all in. And it's crazy, I guess, looking back, thinking that at one point that was my answered prayer, but it ended up being really more of a nightmare than anything. And it really ended up prematurely ending my career.
So a couple of questions with that. First, I'll touch on, when I'm advising the firefighters, one of my biggest appeals is please do not just plan on doing drop, because you don't know what's going to happen over the years. And, your book, I've even referenced it recently, because you just don't know what's going to happen over your 25-year career, that you're going to be able to do another 5 or 8 years past 25 years. You don't know how your body's going to hold up. You don't know what, if you're going to develop cancer, whether it's job related or not, or some other ailment that will mean that you can't continue. So, of course, I'm in the deferred comp side of things. So I'm encouraging people to save their money throughout their career. But yours was cut short, and I'm sure that that's not where you saw things going forward. And not asking about your finances so much, that we can do that another time. But um regarding what was your plan and your vision for your career, I mean, did you lay it out and say, okay, after 25 years, or this is what I'm going to do, or I'm going to go into drop? I mean, did you see all of that?
Yeah, I think I actually did a pretty good job of pre-planning things. And I'm thankful that I did because of how things worked out. Um, I was in deferred comp, and I was aggressively paying off my house. I did a 15-year loan where I was paying bi-monthly. I mean, that 15-year loan ended up being like, I think 11 years or so.
Nice.
And, so my goal was to do 25 years and run away. And, um, and that even included about a year and a half in which I would have earned my pension, but I wouldn't be receiving it because I would have had my 25 in when I was 46 and a half, and I couldn't
Okay.
have collected it until I was 48.
Right.
But even with that year and a half of not getting paid, I was confident that we would be fine because at the same time my house would be paid off. And in fact, all my bills would be paid off. Like I would have zero debt. So that's kind of the plan I had in my head. Um, really going into the last part of my career. Now, when I went to the 40-hour position, I realized that's something that, I mean, this changes things. I really enjoyed that, and I thought that I could have done that until they kicked me out of the drop. So, I was looking at doing that particular job if it would have worked out for what, probably a decade or so, maybe a little bit
Mm-hmm.
longer before I would have ran out of time.
Yeah.
Um, and it didn't play out that way. It wasn't in the cards,
Yeah.
but thankfully I had been so aggressive in paying stuff off to where, when all the things happened to me, like I was, I was sweating it, but I wasn't, it wasn't the end of the world. Like
Right.
I knew I was going to be okay one way or the other. Like, and I did go, there was a good month between when I actually ran out of time with the city and was on unpaid leave to where the pension met and went through. So, and I knew that I could go into my deferred comp if I had to.
Right.
Um, and luckily I never had to.
Nice.
But I knew that was an option. So my deferred comp was absolutely my backup plan.
That's great. That's great.
And
Yeah.
but I just never had to luckily go into it. But um as stressful as that whole situation was, if I didn't have my stuff in order, it would have been a lot worse.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that can create a whole nother level of stress.
And then, because I did get the pension and because everything is paid off, like I've found myself in this new retirement, and I think I floundered for a minute, to be honest, because it was so acute, and I didn't plan this out the way it happened, so I didn't really know where I belong or what I do. But I could tell you now, after being, for 2 years basically being gone, that I love that I now have the ability to make decisions where monetary factors aren't the top priority. Like
Right.
before, where I needed, like, what's the money, that was such a huge factor beforehand. Now it's like, and of course I like money, but like it doesn't, it's not the deciding factor to where it played a bigger part beforehand. So that kind of freedom that I have now has been amazing. And I could
Yeah.
just do what I feel in my heart is the right thing to do, and the right, to spend my time and effort instead of just money, 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 money.
Right. Right. Makes the world go round, right?
Yeah.
what so it is such a it, the your business is such a family oriented, brothers and sisters type tribe. What happened? How do you become on the outs when you're trying to do so much good? Help me understand whatever you can share or want to share. But I see this industry as such a tight knit community and brothers and sisters and rallying around each other and being there for each other. And I got the feeling in your book, in your story, that you were the redheaded stepchild, so to speak, right? I don't know how else to word it.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of saying it. I I again, I've had time on my side now, and you better believe there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about things and how they went down. And I can own, I could definitely own my part. Like, I realize I didn't necessarily make things easy. I was stubborn and hard headed, and um, kind of just set in my ways. Like, it was things were definitely very black and white with me and how I felt. And when you're upstairs and you're dealing with administration, like, it's not always that simple. And I think that although my intentions were always in the right place, they were always good. I was always fighting for my members. I think that they were just sick of me fighting. And as much good as I was doing, I think they were sick of putting up with my crap. Um, and just the constant fights and arguments, and because we had difference of opinions, and like, I don't regret what I was fighting for, because I know what I was fighting for. I regret how I fought for it. I
Yep.
wish I would have been uh, just more judicial in how I went about things, and would have been able to talk things out more instead of just arguing. Um, I think it would have went a longer way, and that was, uh, I don't know. I think that's the union side of me, the firefighter side of me. Like, it, it's we're used to talking one way, and when you're talking with all of a sudden your bosses, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really get the memo on that. And to the same extent, I will also say they knew how I was before I got up there.
Right.
Like, none of this should have been a surprise at
Right.
all. Like, I was a handful. I was, but it was it was always trying to take care of my guys and gals, and that was period. That was it. That's all that mattered. That was it.
Well, I was going to say that you didn't necessarily transfer that stubbornness into your marriage, but maybe your wife is just a complete saint.
I do call her Saint Lauren, so
Yeah.
she is, and that stubbornness is definitely still still there. It's
Yeah.
not as bad, but it's there.
Yeah. Well, not to get too much into the personal side, but it's no secret that our country, our world is full of divorce.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of divorce among firefighters. Uh, you guys have stuck it out for how many years now?
Oh, uh, it's either 11 or 12,
Okay.
I think. No, it's more than that. It's 13.
Okay.
I've got an 11-year-old. You're gonna have to edit that
That
out.
doesn't mean anything in this
Brian,
in
Brian,
this day and age,
Brian,
right?
fix that for me.
Right.
No, yeah, the I guess there's a couple things about that. For the longest time, I think I did what a lot of us do, which was not tell her anything.
Mm-hmm.
I kept it inside. She didn't need to know. I felt like I was protecting her. And when I finally started talking about stuff, I think it got better, and I don't think she realized how much stuff was affecting me. But I think really the best thing that I did was start bringing her to different conferences and different
Mm,
events. Like probably the biggest thing was, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but the First Responders Bridge Retreat in
mm-hmm.
Columbus. Um,
Yeah.
they do events usually 4 times a year. It's a 2.5 day retreat, and it's made for you to bring your spouses, and it's police, corrections, dispatchers, EMS, and fire. So we're meant to bring our spouses, and for a lot of us, the first time, that's an opportunity for our spouses to learn what this job does to us. Really, more than anything, the negative things that this job does to us, the post traumatic stress, the anger, the drinking, the all that kind of stuff. And bringing her around to that, and 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 her just realizing that, I guess, how much the job had physically and mentally changed me
Mm-hmm.
was is I think why she's still here. Like if we wouldn't have done that and she just thought I was a hole,
Mm-hmm.
um, then we would have been divorced, I think, a long time ago. But I think she realized that. Uh, well, I don't want to say I'm not one because I still am a little, but like she has realized, and I have, I've done a lot of work, and I've actually, probably the most interesting thing that I've done recently was I did I did a brain scan, and it showed is that I was in fight or flight nonstop.
Mm.
Even though I'd
Yep.
been retired for like a year and a half at that point, I was still, my hypervigilance was off the charts. I was quick to anger. Um, and I did 6 months worth of neurofeedback with, and that was 3 sessions a week. And I can get into that if you want. But the result was I did another brain scan at the end of last year. And like it shows like that before my brain, there was parts of it that weren't even turned on, weren't even functioning. And now everything's online. It's working how it should be. I had, before I would just react. Like there was no time for me to even make a decision. And now I have that time lapse to where I can make a decision instead of just reacting, which has been great
Wow.
because a lot of times my reaction was anger.
Right.
Automatic. Here it comes. And it was at my wife, it was at my kids, my parents, anybody. Anytime I was challenged, that was just a reflex. And I had to basically deprogram my brain back to normal.
And
Um
so you did that through uh,
through
treatment,
through neuro
essentially.
yeah, through neurofeedback is what it's called. Neurofeedback or
Nice.
biofeedback.
Yeah.
And that's just really retraining your brain, and is what it's doing. And
That's great. How long was that process? But when you saw the difference in your brain scan?
well, it was, I did it for 6 months, and we did the brain scan, to follow up to see the changes. But I could tell probably 3 or 4 months into it, I felt a positive difference. Like I felt myself being calmer, being able to talk, not being, anywhere near as aggressive or on edge, and things just like started feeling like my old self again. I was able to focus again. Um, so I don't know. It was there's so many different treatments out there for first responders,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to just know that if you try something and it doesn't work, okay, try something
Right.
else. Try
Right.
something else. Try something else until you find whatever works for you. Like it's not one magic pill. Um, I wish it was,
Right.
but you have to do the work. And sometimes people try one, um one treatment plan, and that's all they need. It works, and good for them. Sometimes
Yeah.
it takes a half a dozen, like me, to where you finally find the one that actually works for you. But I could tell you, it was worth it.
Yeah. Is that what the Center of Excellence focuses on? Is maybe there's a different path to recovery or to help,
They,
or
yeah,
do they kind of stay focused on one path?
no, they definitely have different paths and different options. They do a lot of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. They do EMDR there. They allow you to go off site and do the stellate ganglion block shot in your neck.
Oh, okay.
Um, they do trauma stuff where you actually run through your traumas. Um, they talk about your childhood stuff. So and on top of all that stuff, they treat everybody with whatever medications that they prescribe. So there's options there of how they're going to treat you, and there's really two main tracks as far as it's funny that the as soon as I got out of the van when I got there, one of the guys asked me, "Are you a thinker or are you a drinker?"
I think that was one of the things that stuck with me the most from your
Yeah.
book. I've said it and repeated it.
So
Yeah.
are you? And basically, are they saying, are you here for mental health, or are you here because of substance abuse?
Right.
And a lot of people were there for both.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, that speaking of life, I thought one of the good quotes, ironically from Dolly Parton in your book, "Don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life." And I think, like you said, either you said it here or I read it in the book about having to find hobbies, because you had your work and you had your family, but you didn't really have a hobby or something to focus on.
yeah,
And now you feel like you found that after a couple years.
yeah, I've kind of got
I mean, you're staying busy. You're
yeah,
definitely staying busy.
yes, yeah. I don't do well being bored.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of have, I guess I have two hobbies now. One is like outdoors, which is good. Um, it's disc golf. So
Oh, yes, I've heard
don't
of such
call
a
it
thing.
don't
I
call it
haven't played it.
don't call it. I made the mistake as a kid of calling it frisbee golf, and I had and this was at a record store that sold the disc, and I had the guy go, "It is called disc golf." He sounded like the comic book guy from The Simpsons. He said, "Frisbee is a trademark of Whammo." So I don't I always remember that.
That stuck with you, so now you
But
say it right.
so the point is, disc golf. It's just like golf, but you're throwing frisbees into these goals, and it's just
Okay.
it's a great. There's so many courses around me, and um, it's a great way of just getting outdoors and being active, and it's stuff I can do with my boys. Like
Mm-hmm.
they love it too. So
That's awesome.
I didn't play at all last year because I had shoulder surgery in March,
Okay.
and I couldn't throw. So I'm ready to go. Um,
Good.
now that the weather is finally breaking. So that's my outdoor hobby, and then my indoor hobby. I go in my garage and I do. It's called pyrography, and which is a fancy way of saying wood burning.
Okay.
So, and I basically have a fancy pen that is plugged in, and it just burns into wood. So, like a lot of times, I will trace logos or just I just make different things for people. Like I'm not in it to sell anything. I basically just make gifts now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that can be therapeutic
The
too.
the coolest thing I got is I've got a brand, just like like if you would like a cow or whatever else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's of my face,
Okay.
which
Cool.
everybody's like,
That's
what?
cool.
So I have, like, instead of signing the back of the wood pieces, like I just brand my face on it now. Like, this was done
So that
by
was like
Jim.
the little I don't have it
The
sitting
little
here, but the little business card square that you
that's exactly it.
yeah. Okay. That's cool.
Yes.
That's nice.
So
That's fun. Now you've got your so you don't have to sign your name on all your
so
fixins and
it's just it's ridiculous. And it is what it is. It's fun.
that's cool. Well, so what does it was before the show we were talking about I almost was going to introduce you as former podcaster based on information in your book, but you're still presently doing podcasts. So what does the future hold for you that you can actually control or that you can see that far ahead? You've got a few things with podcasting and
Yeah,
maybe a sequel to the book.
maybe. Yeah. So I've got two different podcasts on Firefighter Nation, which is a part of the fire engineering uh, world, and one is just myself, ABS Radio, where I just talk about whatever health and wellness stuff, and then the other one is my friend Nick that I do the Firefighter Health and Wellness Conference with. They actually gave us a show, and I threw out this title. I wasn't really being serious because I thought they would say no, but I said we're going to call it the "We Can't Believe They Gave Us the Show" with Nick and Jim. And to their credit, they were like, "That's fine, okay." I'm like, okay, so we went with it. So
That's
I
fun.
do a show for each one of those each month, and then I have an article, like a column that I write for Firefighter Nation, which is again another thing where I thought they were going to be like, yeah, we're not going to let you do that, but they did because I call it the airing of grievances, which is it's
Nice.
a Seinfeld reference from
Yeah.
my favorite Seinfeld episode where they talk about Festivus,
Yes.
and it's really just me. I pick a topic and I just kind of complain about it and offer
Yeah.
solutions. So
Is it a topic about anything or specifically in the fire?
it's usually a health and wellness
Okay.
type of. That's kind of where I am comfortable with. I try to stay in my lane there. Like, I've never been a tactics guy. Um, I've been more of a health and wellness guy. So whether it's cancer, behavioral health, I'm really big into right now just hearing loss and trying to, get more information out there about that. Um, so it's like, you know, my I s- again, I told you earlier, I kind of floundered at the beginning of the retirement, not knowing
Mm-hmm.
what I was going to do. And even with the book, like, the book was great, but it's not a long-term thing,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Although trying to record the Audible is a long-term thing, it seems. But that's hopefully almost done and will be out here soon. But um, it was just trying to figure out where I can still contribute and still have a purpose and figure out what my new identity was. And
Right.
and I think that is kind of worked itself out. Like, I feel like I'm contributing still at a high level, and it's different. Instead of the 300 members that I'm was dealing with in Dayton, which I would have done anything for, and I still will. Now I'm working for 350,000 plus, firefighters throughout the U.S. and Canada doing stuff with the IFF, whether it's the PPE committee I'm on. I'm also on the Wellness Fitness Initiative, which is all about wellness for firefighters. So,
Right.
and then still doing stuff with the state as far as peer support goes and doing trainings with them. And it's like, so I think I found a balance of where I'm doing enough, but I'm not drowning. And
Right.
more importantly, like, here's the biggest thing for me. Like, I've realized, and I guess, I'll ask you this. Have you ever heard of the term radical acceptance?
I have.
Okay. So for those
Yes.
those listeners at home, the gist of it is, and it's just how it sounds, like, you radically accept that, um whatever it is that you believe is a good thing. Like, you take it on. And with that, like, I've been trying to really radically accept that everything that happened to me in my job, how it ended, even though it sucked, in reality, it was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Right.
Because I find myself in a situation now in which I've got an 11-year-old, I've got an 8-year-old, and I can be there for almost everything.
That's
For
awesome.
practices, for games, like, instead of being at work, it's being gone. I'm present. I'm home, and like I realize how rare that is to have. So, like, as much as stuff sucked, it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
And I get to
Yeah.
be dad, I get to be husband, and I can still do stuff at a high level, but it's on my terms now.
Yeah, there's so many times that something pivotal or traumatic happens in our lives, and I mean, if we could just have had that hindsight ahead of time, it would have made that that event easier to deal with, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I thought
Doesn't work that way.
it was the end of the world, because that
Right.
was like that job was my identity, and I really did feel for the longest time, and it's gotten better, but I felt like I abandoned my guys and
Yeah.
gals there. Like, I
Yep.
felt like I was the one that was keeping their heads above water, and
Yep.
without me that they would drown. And that luckily that didn't happen,
Right.
you
Yep.
know. And the ones that know, like, they can still call, and I'll still
Right.
answer,
Yep.
and I'll help them out regardless. And in fact, like, I'm no longer handcuffed. Like, I really have the freedom to do whatever, and
Yep.
that has been pretty cool.
That's great. So how can people find you?
All you,
Phone number.
all you stalkers out there.
Right. Well, I felt like I was doing that to you, but I found you.
No,
But I have your book.
and my business card.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
If
Instagram?
Yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing on there, if I got to be
Okay.
honest. Like, I'm more of a MySpace guy.
Yeah.
I miss Tom.
That's a while back.
Yeah. My email is simply Jim Burneka Jr. at gmail.com. So that's JimBurneka Jr. You can just hit me up there for whatever.
Right.
That's probably the easiest.
Great. Well, I didn't state a script of what I wanted to talk to you about, but I enjoyed talking to you. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think you have a lot more to say, and I hope you are getting it across in your podcast and in other messages. More I want to touch on, but maybe you can come back and give me a little bit more time.
Yeah,
But I appreciate it.
That'd be great. I'd be up for that.
Great. So thank you for joining me on this episode of Compounding Change. Remember, big results come from small, consistent actions. Until next time, take care, keep moving forward, and keep building a life filled with better health, wealth, and purpose.
This has been the Compounding Change Podcast with Shannon Davis. If you are a firefighter or first responder, you know that change happens fast. Life changes, finance changes, compounding change. Shannon Davis is a certified retirement counselor who understands the needs of Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters members. Click on daviscompoundingchange.com to learn more. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Please note that investment involves risk and no statements made in this recording are indicative of future performance. The Compounding Change Podcast is brought to you by Shannon Davis.